My name is Monica Wilkinson Kelly. I'm the archivist at the Edith B. Ford Memorial Library in Ovid, New York. This interview is being conducted as part of the Cayuga and Seneca Lakes Agriculture and Craft Beverage Memory Project. Today is August 19, 2021. I am interviewing Paul Brock of Silver Thread Vineyard in Lodi, New York. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
So, can you tell me your full name and where you're from?
Paul Brock. I'm from Lodi, New York, Haywood, New York, and I'm co-owner, vineyard manager, winemaker at Silver Thread Vineyard.
And where were you from originally? Were you from this area?
Originally from Saratoga Springs, worked my way down the Hudson, ended up in Washington, D.C., and then ended up going to grad school at Cornell. I got my Master's of Science in Food Science, and then migrated into the wine industry. I majored in viticulture and winemaking while I was there, mostly winemaking. But
okay, so you had a degree in chemistry or
previous to that, I had a chemical engineering degree from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute.
Wow,
that's my first degree. Yep.
That's amazing. And so your background, do you have family involved in agriculture? Did you come from a tradition of?
No, actually grew up a very blue collar family. My grandfather had a really big garden, which was really my first introduction to growing things, and I always really enjoyed helping out in the garden and having the fresh vegetables, and having some Italian heritage, like many Italian families in America. There was some history of growing grapes and making wine, and I guess some of my great aunts and uncles and great grandfathers used to work on farms.
Oh, okay.
But nobody I knew, and I never saw it. So
yeah, I think those early experiences really make a big impression when you're young, like that. So why did you make the career move into the wine industry from?
It was Shannon's fault. She had taken the hotel wines class at Cornell, got interested in wine. Actually brought me to my first winery ever when we were still in college. She brought me to Wagner, which we can now see out our kitchen window. We never really considered it until we were in DC, and I kind of decided, I was not going to be in the office. I was a patent examiner down there. I didn't want to be in the office for the rest of my career. And I liked working with people. I liked working outside. And as she got into wine, I decided I needed to learn more about it and figured, this is something I can do. This is something I want to do. And I just started reading a lot. At the time, I was taking the metro to work, so I could read a lot every day. I had 35, 40 minutes of commuting where I was just reading books, and I just read everything I could get my hands on about wine. Ended up taking a non-paying position at University of Maryland with a gentleman named Joe Fiola, who would let me go there one day a week. And as a federal employee, I could work extra time, so I could do that one day a week out in Keedysville, Maryland. And that was my first real job in the wine industry. I was working for free at first, and then he started paying me. I did that for a couple of years while we were transitioning and trying to save up enough money that we could leave our jobs there, and I could go to grad school.
Okay. And you purchased the property when?
In 2011. We took over September 1st, 2011.
That was a big investment. A startup. It was a startup. It was already established by somebody before that. In 82, was it the vines were planted?
Richard Fiegel first grafted vines in 1981 and planted the first 4 rows in 1982, yes.
And what is a typical day like for you during, say, seasonally? Like the spring, do you go out and inspect the vines in the winter for bud break or?
So I try to be in the vineyard as much as possible. Absolutely at least once a week throughout the year I'm in the vineyard, and certain times a year I'm in the vineyard every day. But there is no typical day, and that's one of the things I absolutely love about being in this industry is that I kind of wake up every morning and say what needs to be done today. And sometimes it's putting out fires, and other times there's a little more flexibility in what happens. But from February until we're done pruning, we're pruning, and then we're tying, and then in the fall, September, it's harvest, and that's pretty locked in until November. So other than that, it's always what needs to be done today. And whether it be in the vineyard or the winery, It just really depends.
And did you have damage in August 2018? I know the area
So the land was really hurt in terms of damage.
did. The driveway, I think,
Yeah,
Shannon
you know
mentioned.
that 11 inches in 5 hours really changed the landscape, but generally didn't hurt our vineyard. We have an undervine cover crop, and any surface water did not degrade where we have vines or where we travel with our tractor. So we got really lucky that year. All of the ravines that surround our vineyard were completely cleared out and reformed. So we got really lucky that day. We almost lost a barn, but we were able to save it after quite a bit of work.
Wow. And today we have the remnants of Hurricane Fred, I think, unfortunately, here.
Yeah,
Right?
you can kind of probably hear some of the water around us.
I can hear it,
but,
yeah, definitely.
going back to 2018, the day before that, there was no water in the stream that runs to our north. It's a seasonal stream, and we got the flood and the banks are overflowing, and it's just incredible how things can change. So normally at this time of year, there's no water in that stream.
Wow.
To the north there.
Well, speaking of erosion, can you talk about the soil here a little bit?
Yeah.
What makes it unique? I know from one section of the vineyard to another, you can have a variable or change.
Yeah, as with all the Finger Lakes, is glacially formed, and closer to the lakes, there's not as much soil because the glaciers actually push the soil away. Further away from the lakes, there's more soil, and so down here, our vineyard closest to the lake, we have between 1 and 2 feet of soil. And in our upper vineyard, a little bit further away from the lake, at most there's probably about 3.5, maybe 4 feet, but we get down to as little as a foot or less up here also. So it really just depends on where the shale is. It's all silt loam soil. There's clay deposits where water comes out of the shale, and it's just a cascade of shale as you come down the hill. We just got done preparing a new vineyard. We cleared some land and putting tile in the ground. It's been quite a project, and just they wanted to get the tile at least 3 feet, 3.5 feet down, plastic tile, and they had to rip up a lot of the shale to do that. So it's been really interesting to see the different types of shale throughout the field, and it's just a 4.5 acre field, and some places where there's more soil, and some places where the shale is right there on the surface, and it's like we're going to be planting vines right into broken shale.
Wow,
so
that's a big project. I saw all of the boulders and big rocks. We're not talking little rocks. We're talking boulders.
No, we had to get a huge excavator in here to move some of those rocks. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's worth it to be able to farm that land again. I mean, that land was a vineyard 100 years ago. So.
Okay. And so are you planting the vines yourself, or are you having somebody, I know everyone's doing the laser planting.
Yeah, so actually laser planting has progressed into GPS planting now, and yeah, the guys over there at Hosmer are, Tim Hosmer is the guy to hire for that, and they do a great job. And I couldn't plant rows any straighter than that, or any faster than that, or any better, so I hire somebody to do things that can be done better than what I can do. So.
Yeah, I think they designed that. Cameron said he was talking about how they put it all together, different parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So speaking of technology, what do you see what has been a great improvement technologically for you over the past years since you've been here at 10 years?
Yeah, so the biggest change in how we farm has been the improved biological controls that are accessible and the understanding of those. So all that's really happened in just the past 5 years. Now there's been biological controls on the market for 20 years. Richard Fiegel, who previously owned Silver Thread, would use some, but those have advanced. They've gotten better over time, and there's just more of them, and that they're more effective has made it easier to use them for farming and to make them part of what we're doing. In the cellar, the biggest advances has been just our understanding of fermentation nutrition and making sure that we're getting the best expression from the vineyard through each fermentation that we have, no matter what. And I've really studied that. And other than that, like the technology of bottling and stuff has been pretty much the same over the past 10 years. and we have really good understanding of that. I mean, Shannon was mentioning we're both educators. I've been teaching at Finger Lakes Community College for the past 10 years. I'm an associate professor there, leaving that position at the end of next week. So.
Oh, to be full-time here?
Yeah, so 11 years there. We've had this for 10 years, and this is the full-time thing going forward. So.
Wow. So what do you consider one of the stressors of the job?
I don't know. I mean, things that keep me up at night are usually a surprise to me. Like when I've got something as big as the field and having bits and pieces of things where I just don't know how they're going to happen before the next step has to happen. That's what keeps me up at night. You know, in terms of the weather, I tend not to worry about that because I can't do anything about it.
Right.
It's the things that I know I can impact that I can do something about. So, understanding, I think that the most important thing for somebody in this industry is to know and keep learning. To know as much as you can and keep learning. And I'm always trying to keep learning, and stay ahead of the curve, so that I can be applying knowledge, so I don't have to worry about the things that might be a problem. But yeah, the things that I worry about are the things that I know I've got to get done at a certain time. And it's not about the weather. It's not about the vintage. It's whatever that throws at us, I know we can get through. So
that's a good attitude, boy. Now, production, is the pressing all done here? Do you have a bottling production here on site?
Yeah, so it really depends on the line. For all of our still lines, all the grapes are processed here, all the fermentations happen here, all the blending and filtrations happen here. But we don't have a bottling line for still lines yet. For sparkling wine, everything except for disgorging will happen here. For traditional sparkling wine, and then for pet nat, everything happens on site. So it just really depends on which wine it is. But the wines are all made here. It's just whether or not they go into bottle here or not.
And can you talk about your relationship with the other winemakers and wineries in the area?
Yeah, I pretty much, if you told me to call somebody right now, I could call them, and they'd answer their phone. And I have a great relationship. I mean, this is one of the best parts about the Finger Lakes wine industry, and what separates the Finger Lakes wine. There's two things that separate the Finger Lakes wine industry that are independent of the grapes and the wine that we're making. It's the people and how well we get along and how well we help each other. And it's Cornell, and the fact that we have Cornell right here, and that we, as an industry, have relied on them for so long, and we just kind of take that for granted. So it's really amazing place to be making wine and growing grapes, because there's just so much support within the industry and in academia too.
And do you have a signature wine or something that you're really proud
Riesling.
Riesling.
I mean, we make more Rieslings than we make anything else, but I have no favorites. So yeah.
And you produce, I think, 3,000 cases.
Yep.
So is that your market? Can you talk about your specific market and your audience per se?
Yeah. So most of our wine is going out the front door, and we're selling it here to our wine club, direct to consumer, and we do have distribution throughout the Northeast. So.
All right, and you talked about some of the threats, and we talked about the spotted lanternfly a little bit.
Yeah. We'll just deal with it when it gets here. We know it's going to get here, but I'm hoping that the researchers at Cornell and Penn State will have some better control methods figured out before it actually gets here. So.
Right, I think they were working on a biological. You mentioned a biological.
Yeah, so that's the most. I don't know. It's a couple funguses that will kill them, and it could actually be controlling the population in Pennsylvania as it is. So
well, that's
we'll
good
see.
News.
It's interesting. I don't want to say it's scary, but I mean it has the implications to have a big impact on us. So we'll see. We'll play that game when it comes.
And so, what do you think is your greatest contribution, if you had to say? It sounds like you've done so many things, teaching.
For the industry, as we've gotten into biological management, I started a group of growers that get together every once in a while. We've kind of been on hiatus since the pandemic started. But for 2 years before the pandemic started, and we've loosely been connected, but I'll get everybody back together starting next year, just so we could talk about new biological ways to farm grapes. So that's been a great contribution. I see a lot more people adopting those practices, whether or not I have anything to do with it. But outside of Silver Thread, it's been educating so many people that are now winemakers and vineyard managers here in the Finger Lakes, and I'm really proud of that. Just Shannon and I trying to be an example and to keep teaching people, and we have no secrets. There are no secrets in this industry. And I'm willing to share with people if they ask questions.
And what would you tell somebody interested in a career either in vineyard management or winemaking?
Yeah, as I said before, learn as much as you can and keep learning. Don't take for granted anything one person says. Question it and get information that you can rely on. There's so much, I'd say there's so many old wives' tales online about the industry, whether it be grape growing or winemaking. You've really got to have your own understanding, always want to learn more, and keep pushing the envelope to find your own niche in the market. Everybody has their own niche in the market. No two wineries are the same, no two vineyards are the same, and it makes for a really great lifestyle. So.
Anything else you'd like to add or that we didn't cover?
All sorts of things.
Well, keep going.
Yeah, no, I feel very fortunate to be in this industry. So be here in the Finger Lakes, and I look forward to doing it for the rest of my career.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Again, this is Paul Brock of Silver Thread Vineyard, Kaywood, Lodi, Kaywood Road, rather, in Lodi, New York. And I am Monica Wilkinson Kelly of the Edith Ford Library. Today is August 19, 2021. And thanks so much for your time, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Okay.